Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com.
Draft Mechanic, episode 114.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we're back from our end-of-year hiatus. We are doing our wrap-up of 2019, so we've got game superlatives, our top games of 2019, and our top beers of 2019. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. No, the all is for the best in the best of our world.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
With a little break every now and then.
Yeah, certainly.
I was really kind of wondering if we were going to be able to get through the intro and remember exactly how it goes, but we did a pretty good job there. I'm pretty happy with that.
You think I wasn't sitting here going, what is the guild number? The guild number is 2470.
What is our names? We actually, for those of you tuning in for the very first time, obviously we've been doing this for about 4 years and just coming back off of our winter break right now. And on our show notes, I've always had this line here at the very beginning that I've always had there as kind of a joke, but it's more apropos than ever now. The very first line in our show notes is, don't forget to say your names and what your podcast is about.
You haven't said what the podcast is about yet.
Well, we are the podcast about board games and craft beer, and we're going to do everything we can to tie the two together. So thank you so much, all you listeners out there in Listenerland. Is that a place?
It's everywhere that's not right here.
For allowing us the liberty of a winter break of sorts. We had, to decide to take the last 2 months off to kind of reset where we were with the podcast, get our energy back, and play some games. And also, because I traveled like infinity much for work over the last 6 months, it's been kind of a struggle.
And also the holidays.
Yes, also those holidays. I hope that everybody out there in Listenerland got all of the board games they wanted for Christmas, or at least some of them, and or played some board games or whatever. I hope that y'all are doing great. How are you doing out there? How are you doing, Danielle?
I'm doing just fine. I'd like to know where you can find us on Twitter and Facebook.
Well, you can find us on the internet at draftmechanic.net, which is your one-stop shop for all your Draft Mechanic needs. And you can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at the @draftmechanic tag or /draftmechanic, whichever one it is on those particular websites.
And we've got a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. I remembered it.
I'm proud of you.
So there will be a thread up for this episode, as there is for every episode. If we're talking about something and you would like to let us know what you think about it, particularly with our end of game and superlative stuff, we would love to know what our listeners think about that and their favorite beers. So go over to that thread and let us know.
And also, we do have a Slack channel, which we have mentioned in the past, but seeing as we've taken such a long break, and this is probably the first episode some people are listening to in quite some time, you can go to draftmechanic.net and click Slack and jump into our Slack channel where we talk about board games and beer, and every now and then BJ posts a tap list of beers and he wants to know what it is that he should drink.
And you know what? He is very good at taking your suggestions.
Yes.
So
Danielle, what if people are local?
If they are local, if you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we do game meetups twice every month. We still do 2 of them every month. One on the first Thursday of every month at Good Road Cider Works. We just did that one this past week. And one on the third Tuesday of every month at Salud Cerveceria. This next one coming up is going to be on January 21st at Salud, and we would love to see you there. They've got food, they've got beer, they've got non-alcoholic drinks that they have just expanded their menu on as well. Their food is so good. They have nice big tables and you can play games. We would love to see anybody in the local area there.
Yo, pro tip. If you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, Salud now has breakfast. They have tacos that you can get with like really good chorizo, and they're very good. Maybe I've spent some days at Salud.
Also the meatballs, man.
Also, if you were on the internet, specifically Board Game Geek, we do have a micro badge available, and for the first time in a while, I have some new micro badges to announce.
Everybody got those micro badge codes from BGG at the beginning of the year.
Big thanks to Mitch Kidder, Grant Lovett, and also Eric Scheer for picking up the Draft Mechanic micro badge. If you would like one of those, we just got like another 1,000 Geek Gold from the end of year Geek Gold bonus drive because, supporters of BGG get a bunch of Geek Gold. And if you would like some of it, I will gladly give you some Geek Gold to go pick up the Draft Mechanic micro badge. You can go to Guild 2470, click on a thread that I'm pretty sure we have pinned, and if not, just shoot me a message on BGG and I'll be like, yo, here it is.
It's definitely there. You can request that at Geek Gold. One of us will shoot it right over to you.
Here's the goods.
Okay, weirdo.
I mean, the geek goods. Geek Gold goods?
Sure.
Yes. Danielle, we've been off for 2 months. How did you spend your winter vacation?
The same way you did.
I know, but we're talking about like things we did.
Oh, okay.
In, other worlds of gamings.
Well, we were thankful on the Thanksgiving. We had some family in town for that and some friends over. Then we went to PAX Unplugged, which we're actually going to be talking about in a whole nother episode, which I believe is the next episode that we're going to be doing.
PAX Unplugged.
So we went up to Philadelphia for PAX Unplugged, got to play some cool games, got to see some stuff that's coming out next year, got to see some stuff we hadn't played yet that came out this year. Very exciting. Got to eat some delicious food. And then we went to Albuquerque to see some of your family for Christmas, and we got to visit some friends out there as well.
Yeah.
Came back, cleaned out our gaming collection. So if you are going to Whose Turn Is It Anyway, I know some games you might want to buy. And we are now really ready and raring to go again. At least I am. I don't know about you.
No, I agree. I traveled a whole lot over the last few months for work, which kind of put a strain on us being able to play board games, obviously. I'm sorry that you had to spend all that time with the cat playing Fire Emblem.
The cat can't play Fire Emblem.
But that also allowed me to grab my Nintendo Switch and go on the road a bit. And I really want to say, man, I'm glad that the Nintendo Switch exists because it allowed me to continue to play games over the last few months. I've been playing a game called Sparklight, kind of this roguelike
You destroyed
Zelda top-down
Sparklight.
thing. That was a lot of fun. It's kind of like, a top-down Zelda-esque kind of explorer where you're, gaining additional powers and all this stuff, Metroidvania style. But that was really good. What else have I played? I played some Untitled Goose Game on
You
the
did
road.
play some Goose Game.
Big fan. I am really, really itching to get another start of Breath of the Wild, Zelda Breath of the Wild, though. And I feel
Finally.
like that might happen at some point.
You gonna finish it this time?
Maybe I will finish it after this second playthrough.
Maybe.
Because, this is something that, and again, we can do an entire episode about video games sometime if you want. And listeners, by the way, if you ever want to hear us talk about video games, I'm actually interested to know if that's the kind of thing that would be fun for people to hear about. Because we do play a lot of video games, especially now that we both have Switches. I have a Switch, you have a Switch Lite.
In fairness, I play a lot of video game.
You do play a lot of Fire Emblem. If you would like to hear Fire Emblem as a feature review on Draft Mechanic, I guess we could technically do that.
I've played it through 3.5 times.
How many hours deep are you?
260 something?
Holy crap. I can't. That's a lot. Wow. But anyway, what were we talking about? Video games, they're good, and I love
You were
my
thankful
Nintendo
for the
Switch.
Switch.
Yeah, it's a great thing. But that took up a lot of my gaming time as I was on the road. It is nice to be back, though. So,
Yeah.
all you listeners out there, thank you so much for, letting us have this little break. We definitely needed it. We are back. We're ready to rock. We're ready to talk about board games. And this episode is all about 2019, all about all of the things of 2019.
Hold on, before we get to that, we did say in our last little winter update that when we said we were going to go on a little bit of a break, we said that we were going to reevaluate a bunch of stuff about the podcast.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the point where we should say what we came to about that.
I think that's a very good point.
First and foremost, and I think this is the thing that we most solidly agreed on between the two of us, while we have always said before that the six-pack reviews are games that we have played between us at least 6 times, I think going forward we are going to make sure that we've played them enough times to have a valid opinion for them. But the fact that they needed to be played 6 times, especially with you traveling as much as you were, has been holding us back on talking about some games that we want to talk about. So at this point forward, I think we're going to say that six-pack reviews are definitely played enough times to have a solidified opinion. We haven't just played them once, but they are games where we've fully formed our opinion, but maybe not 6 times.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point to be because, there's some games from 2019 that I really want to spend time on, like On Mars and Black Angel and all these other really huge games. There's no way in heck I am playing On Mars 6 times in a 2-week period. That's just not physically possible.
Those would have been high-gravity reviews anyway.
True.
But a lot of the times, the thing that happened was between you and I, we'd get 4 really solid games in with our game group, and they'd be bigger count games. But the last 2 games or so would just be you and me playing 2-player games of games that weren't meant to be played 2 players, so we could get them in 6 times.
Yeah.
And we'd sit here and go, this is not meant to be played at 2 players, which we already knew.
Everybody knew it.
But we were just trying to get those numbers in because we had promised that if we did a 6-pack review, we would play it 6 times. That's a waste of everybody's time. It's not helping any of you listeners. It's not helping us. It's just making us resentful of the fact that we said that.
Grr.
So, going forward, 6-pack reviews will be fully formed opinions, but not necessarily 6 times.
Yeah, they're feature reviews.
You have some other things that you wanted to talk about on our upfront stuff.
Yeah, so I talk a lot of Kickstarters, and I think a lot of that just comes from the fact that I back a lot of Kickstarters. But 2 things happened over the year 2019. One, all those Kickstarters from 2017 started delivering, and we got buried under a pile of stuff.
Yeah.
And also in 2019, Kickstarters became less and less exciting as I saw a lot of Kickstarters being like, hey, here's a Euro game that you build a city in or something like that. And it kind of just influenced the podcast where the point where as I was preparing for the episode, I was just like, well, I got to find 3 Kickstarters. And then I kind of over the last few months, I realized like, well, no, I don't. In fact, we don't need to talk about a lot of those at all. So I really want to make a pledge to everybody out there, including you, Danielle, that I'm going to use that Kickstarter segment really just to highlight the things that I'm actually really interested in rather than forcing it a bunch of stuff, because that added a lot of time to the beginning of every episode, and I don't want to do that anymore.
Which I think sort of is in keeping with what we're saying. We want to bring this back down to a sub 1 hour and 30-minute podcast, pretty much. So we're going to try to be more efficient in our recent plays. That may become something called a taster segment. We're still deciding about that, but we're going to cut back on the expansity of our recent plays because we feel like in the feature review being not necessarily a 6-game play, we're going to be able to get more games into the feature review segment, so you won't have extended recent plays. We'll be like, okay, we can focus on this one game and talk about all the stuff about this one game. So really we are focused on getting this back down to a more concise, more important to us podcast, and we hope that that benefits you guys as well, that you'll hear us being so excited about the stuff we're talking about.
Yay, excitement.
So you will start seeing those changes in this new year. One thing we are definitely not going to be getting rid of is that final round segment. We both really like that, where we engage with you, the listeners, and we talk about what we're going to be talking about in that episode, get your opinions, and you're able to give those to us via Slack, or if you want, you can give them via the Board Game Geek Guild. So we are definitely going to be keeping that in and really making sure that we post that in advance. I'm looking at Jake right now as I make a hand motion that is emphasizing how important that is.
So kind of what I was thinking there, and this is actually something we'll get to very the end of the episode when we go into that final round segment, I want to actually include that topic in the end of the episode, so as you are listening, you can think about it, kind of make it more of a talk back segment on whatever we talk about in that particular episode, moving on to the next episode. So for this final round, next episode, I want to talk about what was your biggest gaming surprise of 2019. That's always been a really good topic in prior years, so maybe we'll feature that on our next episode, but each final round should be a response to the episode before. I feel like that makes a lot more sense because then, you listen to where we were and then you can come in and give some feedback and it ties it in together. I don't know, some kind of linking thing like that. Sounds fun.
This sounds like you giving an excuse for not having to post it ahead of time, but I like it because it's consistent.
Hey, that's what matters. And listeners out there, I want to hear from you what you want from the show as well. We're not going to implement everything, but if there's things that we've done in the past that you wish we continue to do, or things that you're just like, man, this doesn't really work, or just other ideas of a way to kind of fuel things and make this more of a community, I'm all for it. We are a podcast about board games and craft beer. Both of those things are about community, and I want to really foster and develop that community in 2020.
So you can send those thoughts to emails at milehighgameguys.com.
No. We don't get to say that unless Jeff comes on the podcast.
I know.
You may send those ideas to all our Slack channel, our Board Game Geek Guild, or draftmechanic at gmail.com.
I was going to say, or our email.
All right. Well, hey, let's move on. It's time to move in to the best of 2019. We're going to go to our superlative categories after this break that reminds you Draft Mechanic t-shirts are available and you can buy them.
Want to wear your Draft Mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/draftmechanic for t-shirts.
Superlatives.
Super.
Latives?
No, just super.
These are super.
So
we're off to a great start. Go ahead, Dee. Lead us into this segment.
If you have a high school yearbook, you know what superlatives are. Best smile, most likely to be in
most likely to succeed?
a tent in 10 years or something. I don't know what it is, but we have...
What high school did you go to?
The kind where we apparently called out the person to live in the tent. No, that was not in my high school yearbook.
No, not at all.
But every year we go through these games and we have, best artwork, which is the first category we're going to be talking about, and biggest disappointment, which is, I guess, the tent category, and best party game, that type of thing. So we are going to be talking about games that came out in 2019. I think we are predominantly saying games that came out in English in 2019.
Yeah.
Because there are definitely some games we played that came out in 2019, but that didn't come out in English. And there are some games that we played that came out before 2019, but came out in English in 2019. So for us, they are viable for these categories because we speak English. And we podcast in English, so that's what we're talking about.
See.
Thank you, husband. Best artwork of 2019. What you got?
Oh, what do I have?
What do you
I'm going
have?
first. I'm the first. I am giving this one to Wingspan from Stonemaier Games. The art by Natalia Rojas, Ana Maria Martinez Jamarillo, and Beth Sobel in this game is freaking fantastic. Like, it's such a weird thing to, I guess, say for best art. These are very, realistic, photorealistic drawings of birds. The cover is obviously super gorgeous, but the art in this game is so diverse in terms of the amount of artwork that there is in there. I just see it on the table, and anytime I see this game on the table, I'm just like, oh wow, that's really, really good art. I think that the graphic design on it is also super clean as well, and just everything in general gives it a different table presence and a different look and a different kind of presentation than a lot of other games that came out in 2019. So yeah, that's my pick for Wingspan.
I also wrote Wingspan.
Oh, crap.
And then I wrote I Like Birds afterwards. And frankly, I almost bought some of this art for my mother for Christmas. The only reason that I didn't do it is because I wasn't sure that it was going to get to her in time. But she doesn't listen to this. She's not going to hear it. I am very much probably going to buy one of the pieces of art in this for my mother and possibly for your stepmother as well, now that we know that she likes Roadrunner as much as she did.
Birds.
But this is the first time that I've seen board game art that I've considered buying for somebody who doesn't play board games. Mm-hmm. We have a couple of pieces of board game art around here, particularly Quantai Moria stuff and some of the Scythe artwork, but I considered buying this for several people who don't play board games just because it's such excellent art. So, I mean, they're very, very nice birds.
Fantastic birds and where to buy them. The internet. Do you have anything else that you had considered for artwork as well? I'll be honest,
Not really.
I also considered Tapestry because I just really appreciate the art of each of the different civilizations.
I agree with you on the civilizations. That's they're very nicely done. But the rest of the game was so stark almost.
Yeah, it's very much a graphic design kind of game.
That it sort of took me out of that idea. Like, while I did like the part that was very artsy, the rest of the game pulled that away, and so I was really hesitant to say that this has the best artwork because it very much felt halfway done.
I also kind of wanted to throw a nod towards Freshwater Fly for having really great illustrations of fish, which is a weird thing to say because the game in itself is kind of, I guess, ordinary, but again, we don't see a whole lot of fish-based games, and the fish are really good in Freshwater Fly. I enjoy it.
Yeah, but fish look grosser than birds. They just do. Like, if I have to look at fish or birds, I want to look at birds. Mm-hmm. Because fish look like fish.
Fish look like fish. Fish, delicious, but not good to look at.
No.
Danielle, our next category is Best Non-Miniatures Game Component. Because really here at Draft Mechanic, we're not super big on miniatures games. And I feel like miniatures games always dominate the component category. And
well, because they are very nice. If you get good miniatures, they're absolutely gorgeous, but we don't play those games.
I also feel like after we crossed over in the first category that we're going to have another crossover here, Danielle. Do we?
I don't think we have a crossover. I think you might cross over with my honorable mention.
Okay, so what is your best non-miniature component?
My best non-miniature component is from Mechanica, and it is the actual box of Mechanica. The way it works is that there are these puzzle pieces that you're going to be slotting into your board throughout the game. And as they come out, instead of just having a trade row, they go onto this wheel, and every round the wheel progresses, and when things would be kicked off the trade row, they literally fall into the box in a hole in the wheel. Ooh. So they are just removed from the thing, and you just keep turning it every time, and it moves stuff around, and things become less and less costly as you move them towards the end. And I really just like it. It takes the idea of a trade row and makes it really clean and automated, and just that game is about efficiency and about creating things efficiently, and they found a way to do this upgrade system so efficiently and so cleanly. I really like it.
I dig it. So yeah, I think you understand what my component, non-miniatures component of the year.
I hope I do.
It's the Spectrum dial from Wavelength.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Don't cross
Wavelength
over.
that came a little late in this year, designed by Alex Haig and Wolfgang Warsch, is a party game about, basically, we haven't talked about this on the podcast yet, but it's a podcast about one team. You have this dial, and they're going to kind of choose a word on a spectrum. Like if it's from hot to cold, maybe you're going to say, I don't know, day after pizza, and then because you know where on the dial that particular thing is. But the actual component of this dial is super nice, and it's super colorful, and I love the way it works, and it's built into the, not built into, but it fits into the box, and really just the production of Wavelength overall is fantastic. We will probably talk about Wavelength again later on, so we can get back to that either this episode or next episode.
We will. I have some issues with the production on Wavelength, but I will certainly wait until we talk about it at length. And I appreciate that you like it very much.
So what else did you have as an honorable mention?
My runner-up was the 15-minute sand timer from We're Doomed.
Oh, okay. That is really good.
Because while it is just a sand timer, A, it doesn't get stuck as much as most sand timers do.
It's a good sand timer.
And B, it is so imposing when you smack that 15-minute sand timer down on the table and you're like, okay, this is the game, go. It is imposing on the table, even though the game is chaos. Like, you see that sand timer, and it is very much the center of how much time you have left, how everything needs to go, how you can waste time if you need to, how you can try to force everybody's hand. If I think there's a thing that lets you flip it over in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
But it is an imposing thing for a sand timer, which is normally just trash that you don't want to have in the game and want to replace with a phone timer.
Looking at you, Kitchen Rush.
But I very much liked that sand timer, and I thought you would have put it at least as a runner-up because I knew you liked that game quite a bit.
Yeah, I will say my runner-up for the year in terms of components is not one specific component, but it's games publishers stepping up their game in terms of baked-in inserts. And the two that I'm thinking about most recently are ones that actually just delivered via Kickstarter recently. It is In the Hall of Mountain King by Burnt Island Games, which has a beautiful insert that also came with instructions where to put everything.
You did say In the Hall of the Mountain King, correct?
Yes. What? I see. No, In the Hall of the Mountain King by Burnt Island Games did a great job by including a sheet about where to put everything in the freaking insert. And I freaking love this, which I'll get to in a second. The other one, Atlantis Rising from Elf Creek Games, came pre-punched in the insert, and the insert fits everything perfectly. Yes, that's fantastic. Atlantis Rising from Elf Creek Games has a whole ton of pieces because you're assembling the island of Atlantis, and it has all these, concentric circle pieces. And we haven't actually had a chance to play this. I played it back earlier this year, and it just delivered. But the insert, it's all pre-punched, and it's all already in the insert. Thank you so much, because it's so easy to understand where stuff goes. This was kind of drawn into stark relief, and I talked about this on the internet. The Vital Lacerda Eagle Griffin games have these giant, great productions with beautiful artwork and beautiful components and all this stuff. And then they give you an insert and they're just like, I don't know, you probably got this. There's no information about where stuff goes. And every single time I punch one of those games, I have to go on Board Game Geek, go to find the 10-page long thread of how do I organize this? And then I find somebody's pictures about it, which is good because it is all there. But some publishers are stepping up their game and giving you a clear description of how to use the inserts because they want to take that extra step to make it, build that ease of use into that experience. And I really, really appreciate in 2019, we saw a lot of that. I'm sure we're going to see even more going forward in the future.
So Jake's runner-up, insert hand-holding.
The downer.
I was going to say, I think we've come to the downer category.
We have reached the Time Stories Memorial category for most disappointing game experience of the year. Unsurprisingly, if you had listened to any of our episodes in 2019 that dealt with the subject Time Stories Madame.
I was going to say, particularly the spoiler episode that was just released as I think the last thing on our feed before our little winter break notification.
And also episode 100, and then I think a few episodes before that. It was a bummer. Mang.
Yeah, biggest disappointment for both of us was Time Stories Madame. And
it did not follow through on the promise of Time Stories, and it's a big frustration. The one thing I will say about Madame is at least it ended the white cycle, so maybe we can roll into the blue cycle and have some cool stuff, and hopefully the blue cycle can revive one of our very favorite game franchises of all time.
That is true. And one thing I had said to you earlier was pick a second thing because we knew ahead of time that we both picked Time Stories Madame as our biggest disappointment. We've talked about at length why that is. It has both meta issues and in-game issues that we both found very difficult to work through. So what is your runner-up for this category?
My runner-up is Second Chance, Uwe Rosenberg from Stronghold Games, because I really enjoy A Feast for Odin. I love patchwork. I think Uwe Rosenberg did amazing things with polyominoes as we went into his season trilogy with Indian Summer and the other two, Spring Meadow and the last one that I don't remember the name of. But Second Chance seemed like, it's like, why did we even make this game? Where it is just straight up flip a card, draw your polyomino in. There's almost no decisions you make. Every now and then you're like, oh, well, I guess I can move this one over here. But it's a non-game. Imagine if Patchwork had no interesting parts whatsoever. And then Patchwork Doodle came out at the same time, which I haven't played, but looks like exactly the same game.
It's not great, yeah.
No, I don't understand. It's time to move on. There is a point where you jump the shark on a concept and you need to stop releasing games.
Okay.
And Second Chance was that jump past the shark.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly excited about that, so I wasn't super disappointed about it, but I agree with you, it's not great. My runner-up for biggest disappointment is something I know you're not going to agree with, and that is Fantastic Factories. I don't like that game. I don't like playing it. I don't feel fulfilled by it, and I think we covered that extensively in our review of Fantastic Factories. I wanted it to be something more, and I just really don't get it, and I don't want to bolt more stuff onto it to make it what I wanted it to be. There are other games that I'd rather play, and I know a lot of people really like it, but for me, it's kind of just let it go.
That's fine. You don't have to play it. I'm not going to make you play it again.
That's fine. We can disagree.
I'm going to trick you into playing it.
Okay, weirdo.
I don't think I can trick you into that. Danielle, what is a game from 2019 that you wish you had actually played?
I have two, and you can't stop me.
I'm going to stop you.
One is Trismegistus.
Blah, 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 blah. No, I won't stop you. Go ahead.
One is
Blah, blah, blah.
Trismegistus.
Carry on. I'm away from the microphone now.
One is Trismegistus, which is a game that is coming out from Board and Dice and NSKN, which is all part of Board and Dice at this point. I think we can sort of roll that together.
B&D.
This is a game we have. It's exciting to me. It's one of those heavier games, but it is the kind of game where you are making very few decisions. It's just that every decision you have has an incredible ripple effect down several different paths. So I'm really excited to see. It feels a lot to me like Vinos, where you're making very few decisions, but what you're doing is really important, and I want to give that a shot. We just haven't had a chance to get it to the table. And the other one is Azul Summer Pavilion.
Yeah.
Mostly because I've heard really good things from folks who, like me, were not crazy about the second Azul game and have come back to this third Azul game and been like, okay, this is worthwhile. We're not just beating the Azul horse to death. We have a new thing that is useful and interesting and exciting, and I would like to play that game to see if that is the case for me, or if we can just stop buying Azul games.
Plan B, always finding another way to make you buy the game. So my top ones, one is the kind of the award for a game that I really wanted to pick up at Gen Con but never got to play. It is Black Angel. It's a big game with Ian O'Toole artwork, and it's got space in it. I want to play it so bad, and I just haven't had time to.
Yes, space.
I don't know. From what I understand, it is a lot similar to Twa, in that it is by the same design team as Twa, but in space with Ian O'Toole artwork. So I like it already. It just seems really interesting. Number 2 and 3, I actually ranked all of my want to play games because I had like 20 or 30 games that I want to play at some point.
Shadang.
A lot of these are games that are just kind of like we just got them at the end of the year, like In the Hall of Mountain the King, Glenmore 2, Trismegistus, I kind of put on there, Mystery House is on there, On Mars is on there. But the other one that I really think about that I wanted to get done, but we haven't had a chance to, is Crusoe Crew from Van Ryder Games. This is part of their graphic novel series, but it's a 4-player cooperative graphic novel adventure. And it's just one of those things that I'm sure we could knock this out in an afternoon if, you and me and Tamara and Nathan got together and played it. And I just feel like it's one of those things that we just got to get it done because it seems super fun. And the art and everything about it just seems so exciting and so fun.
The art is adorable. It's like little kids that are running around, it looks like, and they are very cartoony and very cute. So
hopefully we can get to Crusoe Crew pretty soon.
Okay, what about games that you wish you played more in 2019? And just to sort of explain what that is not like older games that you wish you played more. These are games that came out in 2019 that you did get to play, but you wish you had gotten more chances to play for whatever reason.
You ready for me to do this?
I'm ready for this.
So, the game that I wish I had played more in 2019 is the game that I actually played the most in 2019.
Huh.
Keyforge.
Knock Mall.
Keyforge. I
think you've probably
the
played
end-
Knock Mall more.
Yeah, well, I, at the end of 2019, am ready to say I am a Keyforge fan.
Nice.
Alex, I hope you're listening somewhere. Even you couldn't stop me from enjoying Keyforge. No, so...
They've actually stopped playing it, they said in their last episode.
Are you serious?
They've
Son of a...
fallen off on it.
Alex, I'm gonna
Both of them.
I'm gonna defeat Smithison eventually. I'm gonna have one deck eventually. No, so Keyforge is so interesting to me, and I suck at it so bad. I think I've won one game of Keyforge in my entire life, but it keeps bringing me back because it's such an interesting concept, and the fact that it is a deck construction game that I don't have to construct.
And that way it is like the hook. It just keeps bringing you back.
Oh, they ain't telling me no lie.
No.
The hook, it brought me back. And it's very interesting to me to have this as the game I wish I had played more, because this time last year, I had not played Keyforge. And I put it on my list as the most innovative, kind of I mean, it's really cool that they're doing this thing with the unique card games, blah, blah, blah. And then we played it at Whose Turn Is It Anyway last January, and was like, oh, well, crap, I guess I'm going to enjoy Keyforge some.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Alex, for, doing a bad job at teaching me Keyforge that one time.
Okay. I think you're getting a little too much in it, but I'm glad you like that game.
Yeah,
now.
no, it's a lot of fun, and we've continued to grow and can get new stuff. We have some Worlds Collide. We have some of the second set, Age of Ascension, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes. And I'm really also excited to see Keyforge continue as they are continuing to develop more and more content for that in the future. So yeah, game I wish I'd played more of. The game I played the most in 2019, Keyforge.
Nice.
What world is this?
I picked two. One that was a game that we've had for a while, and then I've got a couple of plays in, and I just wanted to get more plays in because I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And one that we got to play right at the end of the year that I would like to play more to see if that is something that I really like to keep playing, or if it was just sort of like a one-off fun experience.
Okay.
The one that we already own is Cartographers, which a role-player tale. Which is a game that we got to play in, I think we played it the first time in September. We played it when we were out in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think I picked it up at like Origins or something and just kind of sat on the shelf for a
I
bit.
certainly got to
Yeah.
play it the first time when we were out in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And then we've played it a bunch of times since then, and I've really come to enjoy it as I've played it more and more, and I'd like to keep playing it because I think it is really interesting, and it takes that drawing polyominoes thing that you were just sort of tearing down in Second Chance, and it gives it sort of interesting mechanics to work around, a nice strong framework, and I really like that game. Mm-hmm. The other one that I just recently got to play is Irish Gauge. I would like to play that again to see if it is really something that I do enjoy, or if we just had a fun time playing it when we were out in Albuquerque with Sean and Matt of Dukes of Dice.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed my play of Irish Gauge, and it's so far out of the wheelhouse of what I normally like that I'd like to give it a couple more tries just to see if that is something that I really do enjoy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Irish Gauge is one of those games that I didn't expect to like, and I thought I was going to really hate that experience, but at the end of it, I'm like, oh, I guess I could actually play a train game, maybe.
I feel like that is like the babyest of train games for babies who can't train,
Yeah.
and that's why we both enjoyed it.
Them babes, what can't train? All right, moving on. The older game played for the first time that you really enjoyed. Danielle, what do you got?
Dice Hospital.
Ooh.
Which is
okay.
a game that I got to play in the middle of the year. I got to play somebody's Kickstarter edition from the first Kickstarter, and then they put it up again on the expansion Kickstarter that you could get all of the stuff, and we definitely backed that instantly because I had such a good time playing that game. It is where you are allocating dice to perform actions, which is something that we are almost always fond of in this house. And I really just enjoyed it. It was a nice theme. It wasn't space. It wasn't like colonization. It was like helping people to get better. And I really enjoyed it. It had some really cool Kickstarter components, which normally I'm not all about, but I do like a nice big plastic ambulance. Okay. And it was a really fun game. I enjoyed my play, even being taught by somebody I didn't really know, which for me is often like a stressful experience to be in a game where I'm like, I don't know anybody, but to be learning this game and to be playing this really super fun game, it was a cool time.
Well, cool. Well, we will hopefully see that sometime in 2020 as that Kickstarter and all of its components deliver.
Cool.
All right, mine is a game that has been on my want to play list for a long time, and I'm glad that it lived up to the hype, and that is Ginkgopolis.
Yeah, I kind of figured you'd pick that.
We had a chance to play Ginkgopolis at Geekway to the West last year. Friend of the show, Chris McGowan, who was up in Illinois, I met him at the Gaming Hoopla, had brought it with him, and we just kind of met up randomly, and we're just like, we could play a game or something. And he's like, yeah, I got Ginkgopolis. I'm like, you have Ginkgopolis? sir, I think it's time. And we played it, and it is exactly what I wanted it to be. There's tile laying, there's a lot of interesting, like, spatial positioning kind of things that you have to do, and you get, stuff, and I like it. I'm sorry, I have a hard time explaining this game. Again, it's a tile-laying game where you're building a city, and the tiles that you are placing are going to give you different scoring components and different scoring objectives based on what you do and where you place them. There's really interesting, like, placement majorities and kind of forming districts with the tiles you place and where your workers are in relation to other people's workers. It's a really, really smart game, and oh boy, I really hope it gets redone, because there's no way I'm spending like $350 on that game. I want it, but I don't want it that bad.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those games that you hear about all the time where people are like, oh, this is an excellent game, but it's out of print, and you're just not going to be able to get it. Or if you are, you're going to be spending a ton of money.
Hey, we got a reprint of Glenmore this year, so I think it's entirely possible at some point we're going to see Ginkgopolis again.
Okay, hard stop on that. We did not get a reprint of Glenmore. We got the dumbly titled
Glenmore
2.
Chronicles.
Like, I'm sure it's a good game, and I would like to get a chance to play the copy that has shown up in our house in the last month.
Yo, that box is really big. Why is the Glenmore 2 box so big?
Why is it called Glenmore 2?
Because it's the second Glenmore, duh.
Yeah.
Azul 2. Ginkgopolis. I really want to play it again. So, Chris, we'll probably see you soon. All right, Danielle, Party Game of the Year. We are moving on to some of our final categories here. What do you have for Party Game of the Year?
First I have a bone to pick with BGG.
Tell me about this
what
bone.
they call party games, which I think is just games that play more than 4 people, which is not what a party game is. Like, Letter Jam is not a party game. It's a game where you have to sit there and think about the correct spelling of things with the letters that are in front and are all mixed up.
Being a party game.
Like, that is a focused game, and you cannot pop in and out of it, and you need to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So, Letter Jam is not my Party Game of the Year. I think 3 Laws of Robotics is going to be my Party Game of the Year. And even this is sort of stretching what I consider a party game.
Yeah.
Because 3 Laws of Robotics, you kind of need to have the same group of people for all 3 rounds, because you want to, it's 3 rounds.
3 rounds.
So you kind of want to keep everybody engaged. And a party game I really consider something you can sort of pop in and out of. That's really one of the main features of a party game. So I picked a backup, which is Wavelength, and I have a couple of reasons why it's not my main. But 3 Laws of Robotics is a fun game where you are trying to figure out what team you're on by asking people questions, the main caveat being that they can lie in response to you, and there are no rules about whether or not they lie. But the goal of everybody is to be passing their card with their key on it to the highest ranking member of their own team. So you want to give people enough information that they know if they're on your team and whether or not you have a higher number. Of course, you don't know what your own team and number are, so you're trying to ascertain that while other questions are being asked. It is a really fun game. I know we both enjoyed it. Our game group did enjoy it, and that is the main thing that pushed it above Wavelength for me. We've played Wavelength with our group a couple of times, and it has been hit or miss with the folks in our group. I know you and I both like it, but there are definitely some folks in our group who were having a rough time with it, and I think Wavelength suffers if certain people in your group don't know everybody else as well as the rest of the group.
Yeah.
Because Wavelength is a game of subjective scales, the amount to which you can read the minds of your team, essentially, is an advantage by far. So I felt like 3 Laws of Robotics was a better party game in my opinion, and we've definitely had some fun with it throughout the year.
No, I definitely had 3 Laws on my short list of stuff for party games. It is a very, very smart design, and I love deduction games, and they made a deduction game that is social. Not a social deduction game, but a deduction game that is social. That is a very important distinction, and
Agreed.
I feel like that is what is important about it. Wavelength definitely has awesome ideas in it, and I feel this came, in the last month or so, and we brought it out pretty much all of our game nights, and it's something that I am super, super intrigued by. I think it's one of the strongest designs in that kind of read your mind kind of space that Wolfgang Warsch likes to play in.
Is it your pick?
No.
Oh.
Oh, what a surprise. you're stealing my thunder here. No, but it is the kind of game that I want to play more of, but I think you're very right in that it does have some drawbacks. I don't think this is a game that you can play with a big enough group. I feel like you need 3-on-3 to make this work, mainly because you only score 10 points and then it's over, and that just means that I've had games of Wavelength where 1 or 2 people didn't even get to be the person setting the wavelength, and that is kind of a downer to me.
Yeah, I think when we came out of our last game, the consensus of our group was we need to play to 2 or 3 times the number of points.
Yeah.
Because you can get like
4 points
4
on a turn.
points in a turn.
And 4 points out of 10 is,
and then
that's a lot.
1 point on the other team's turn. So by the time you get through your team twice, you can have won if you did very, very well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I see where you're at.
If you get 4
It is
points and
possible.
then
4-1,
1 on the other one. So it is very much...
Yeah.
The scoring threshold is very low, and I think everybody felt that.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant design, but the scoring threshold cuts the legs out of the game, which is a bummer.
So what is your pick?
It's We're Doomed, which
Okay,
I guess is
yeah.
not too terribly big of a surprise. We played We're Doomed back at Geekway, I think, for the first time, and it is a absolute raucous, crazy party. And when I think of games that are party games, I can think of no game that I've had more riotously weird, crazy fun this year than We're Doomed.
Yeah, I think it was Gen Con, though.
We played it at Geekway and at Gen Con. We've played it a handful of times. We're Doomed, again, everybody is a different head of state, and you all have different kind of political, socio-political positions. Like you have the democracy, you have the technocracy, so on and so forth.
Theocracy.
And you flip over a 15-minute timer and you've got to build a rocket or blow up, and the world's going to blow up in 15 minutes. It's pure insanity. It is the most unbalanced, completely illogical game that I have played in a long time. But the fun times that I've had with We're Doomed are so much more fun than I've had with any other party game in a very long time. I will say, if your group of friends does not want to have fun, this game will fall on its face.
I think that's a harsh statement.
It is. It very much is. But if you have 6 people or 5 people, if you have a small group and they're more reserved, you're not going to have fun with this. If it is 1:30 in the morning and you've been playing like crazy and you've had all sorts of beverages that we obviously drink a few of here at Draft Mechanic, it can have some of the most ridiculous stuff. Danielle, you shoulder checked me into a garage door.
I did do that.
And we had a game where Jeff at Mile High Game Guys threw his phone at another person to disqualify that person.
His phone was fine.
They're hilarious. Just ridiculous things that can come out of this game. And in the right circumstances, I think We're Doomed can be one of the best party games you could ever pull out.
I agree with you that in the right circumstances, this game is a lot of fun, and I have had a lot of fun with it. But I've also had games where players walked away from it saying, I don't ever want to play that again.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a hard thing to justify, saying, oh, this is the best party game, when there are people walking away saying that was absolute trash.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you see in this game, though, and I do think that if you have a group that this game is the game for, it is a lot of fun.
I think that's kind of the double-edged sword of party games. Like, you can have party games that are bland and appeal to everybody. You're apples to apples, and obviously things in that ilk of the voting game that everybody has a low level of base, kind of like, oh, this is a dick joke of some kind, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the best...
Everyone likes a dick joke.
Everyone does like a dick. That's kind of the whole point of it, is that everybody likes it. But I feel like the best party games are the ones that have the opportunity to elevate you way past the level of fun you could ever have, being like, oh, bananas. Ha ha ha. Well, I guess we did that now. And like, realistically, in my ranked 2019 list, We're Doomed is number 20. It's not even top 10 for me. But the potential for it to be such a ridiculous, amazing time is why I'm picking it as my party game of the year.
I will also say this wasn't a particularly strong year for party games.
No, it was not.
Beyond the ones we've mentioned already, I don't think there were 3 or 4 other ones that we had in contention.
No, and I think some of that might also just be the fact that we don't go after a whole lot of party games. We have to go after games that have some kind of an interesting hook to them. And, the ones we talked about so far are them. That party game section went way longer than any other superlative, which is kind of crazy to me.
So what do you think the best app is of 2019?
I think board game apps had a really interesting year in 2019 because 2019, we saw a lot of kind of high-profile games get released and a lot of high-profile announcements of games. The ones that I picked, honestly, I picked a tie for this, which is the cop-outest copy-out of all time. Mystic Vale,
Wait
Raiders...
for it. I don't think it is.
All right. Mystic Vale, Raiders of the North Sea, Castles of Burgundy, and Terraforming Mars are all exceptional implementations of their games. And two of those, Castles of Burgundy and Terraforming Mars, did it in such a way that made those games look really good. Both of those games are kind of often maligned for their graphical design and just stuff like that, but like Castles of Burgundy app looks way better than Castles of Burgundy and looks even better than the new reversion of Castles of Burgundy, which is a weird kind of oversaturated mess. It's like they went too far in the other direction and made the game
It is
too
a
colorful.
lot of color for a game.
And then Terraforming Mars, the app implementation of that looks as futuristic as that game should be. It's so slick. It's so shiny. There's so much kind of like glistening computer controls here and there that I would really just say those, like all four of those things look awesome. Mystic Vale app makes me get rid of Mystic Vale because that app is so much easier to use. And the Raiders of the North Sea app did such an awesome job bringing that world into an animated kind of space on your tablet or your device or your phone or whatever. I think we call them devices now, right? We're not allowed to call them phones.
They're phones.
They're phones.
Pick one.
Yeah, pick one.
Pick one.
Out of all four of those,
Pick
Terraforming
one.
Mars.
Cool.
Absolutely. It's freaking phenomenal. I love that app.
Peer pressure.
Danielle, pick one. Hey, pick one.
No, I'm going to pick an even more cop-out answer than your cop-out answer,
Well,
which
what's
is
the
I'm
best
going to
board
pick
game
Apple
here?
Arcade.
Wow.
It's not even a game. It's a
It's
service.
not even a game. It's not even specifically board game.
I literally downloaded 0 board game apps on my phone, or my device, I'm sorry, this year. I did not download any, so I felt stupid picking something that was the best app of the year because I played none of them. What I did play a lot of was Apple Arcade, which is a service. If you don't know, it's a $5 a month service, and you can pretty much download anything you want from their selection of games. And a lot of them are very board game-like. They're not. I do not believe there are any straight board game implementations on there, but it is an absolute push forward for app gaming to me.
Yeah.
And it was something I really wanted to call out, and I didn't give you an option to stop me. So that's what I'm saying. Apple Arcade is my board game app of the year. It's my everything app of the year because it was the most influential thing that I saw happen to mobile gaming this year. And
Yeah.
I think that no matter what stage of gaming you are in, it's something that you need to pay attention to.
So call out some top picks from Apple Arcade that you've enjoyed.
I really, really enjoyed Grindstone, which obviously is the kind of game that everybody's been talking about. There's a game called Assemble with Care, which was very much about the story behind the actual game that you were doing. You were putting together different devices that needed to be fixed. You're a handy woman who is going through this town and fixing things for a couple of different groups of customers. But it is very much about the story that is going on with the folks that you are working with. But it was a very smooth transition between how you are fixing, say, this music box for a father and daughter who've lost the mother and the family, and it's very important that you fix this music box so that they can reconnect, or the sister who is working with her other sister who had previously been her funding for a business that she was running, but the sister has lost her job and they're having a difficult time navigating that relationship, but it is intertwined with the objects that you're working with. So that was a really good one that I enjoyed quite a bit. I'm currently playing one called Outlanders, which is a Civ sim where you are trying to build to certain specifications. Kills the crap out of my phone battery, but it is a lot of fun if I can play it while it's plugged in.
Yeah.
So, and since Apple Arcade is constantly updated, what is available now may be different than what is available from a month from now. I played a game called Tint, which is about color mixing, and I played through everything that was available when I downloaded it. Now there are 300 more levels that are available, or something like that. It's 3 whole books of levels. So they are constantly updating it. They're moving stuff in. They may be moving stuff out. I'm not really sure. But for $5 a month, it's frankly the best thing I can say that you can possibly do if you have an iOS device.
Yeah, I want to throw in on that as well, because you obviously have played a lot on your phone, but I have played a lot of Apple Arcade games on our Apple TV. I have like 3 or 4 Apple TVs in this house. I've always been an Apple person, so they're just like a cheap thing that I picked up every now and then. And there's been a lot of games on it that are great for Apple TV as well. I've been playing through Sayonara Wild Hearts, which is unbelievably awesome. It is so freaking pretty on a giant TV, and also just, great sound system. And also Manifold Garden, which is a really surreal, non-Euclidean puzzle-based game, kind of like The Witness or Talos Principle, one of those kind of games where you're trying to navigate this world. So it's really awesome to see that Apple Arcade is not just a thing for your mobile gaming, but also for your set-top box gaming if you have an Apple TV. And I'm super excited to see where that framework goes in the future. So I totally support you saying that, even though you forced me to pick 1 out of 4 and you picked 300 games.
It's not my fault that you fell for the trick.
I did. So with that in mind, let's get to our final superlative, which is the most innovative game of 2019. This was actually kind of a toughie.
I was going to say anticlimactic.
Yeah, but what did you pick? I'm interested.
I picked We're Doomed.
Okay.
But I don't feel great about it.
I also picked We're Doomed.
Do you feel great about it?
I feel okay about it. I feel
better than
okay
me.
about it because of the giant sand timer and the fourth wall breakiness of the game. I feel like at this point, this is something that has been probably done to death on a lot of podcasts, or people have told you about this, but when you get the game of We're Doomed, the deck of cards that you are playing through is sealed. And if you have not played through it yet, skip forward about 60 seconds because it'll spoil something. It says on the very first card and everywhere on it, do not shuffle this deck, never shuffle this deck, never shuffle the deck of stuff, which is hilarious because the very first card says, all right, shuffle all your cards. And just like from the get-go, that is such a smart, tongue-in-cheek, fourth wall breaking, hey, we know you're playing a party game. I want you to know right now how stupid this is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of the same reason I put it in this category, because We're Doomed takes a party game and makes the game part of your party. Mm-hmm. I honestly looked through the list of games we played this year, and I felt like nothing was groundbreakingly, paradigm-destroyingly innovative. Mm-hmm. But this was the thing that jumped out the most to me as something that felt different than everything else.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of party games which are a lot of fun, but the game never really feels like it's a participant in the joke. And We're Doomed feels like the game of We're Doomed is part of the joke.
Yeah, and that's really fun. The other kind of runner-up I had for this category, I don't want to name, because what it does...
Is it Voldemort?
No. What it does will ruin a big surprise of the game to you. And we can talk about that off podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you tell me? Can we cut it here and you tell me?
It's that fourth wall breakiness that really, really impressed me that nobody else is doing yet. So we'll talk about that. And I think maybe a good time to talk about that would be during this break, because we're done with our superlatives and it's time to move on to talking about beers.
I like bears.
Me too. So why
and
don't
turtles.
Wait, what?
I like turtles.
I like trains. There's a meme for you. That was a meme at the earlier part of the 2010s. I don't know. Let's just do this bump music and then come back and talk about beers.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I dropped the meme game. For more information on our top beers of 2019, check out the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net. All right, so here we are at the midpoint of the in-review episode for 2019. And it's at this point that we usually talk about our favorite beers of 2019.
Let's do it. Well, I mean, we usually talk about our favorite beers of whatever year it is.
Yeah, I guess we wouldn't have talked about our 2019 beers last year because that's not how time works.
No.
So, did you have any criteria when you were forming your beer list this year?
I had to have consumed the beer and enjoyed them.
Okay, so for just a little bit of consideration on mine, I had beers that I drank for the first time in 2019.
Is that not the requirement of the list?
Well, I just saying, CBS was one of the best beers I had in 2019.
Yeah.
Skillet is one of the best beers I had in 2019, but
I
I didn't
agree.
put those on the list. So I think it's very clear to say these are beers that we had for the first time. And I hate to say it, but a lot of these beers are going to be one-offs or stuff that you don't have a chance to get again. In fact, I think of my 6 here, there's 2 that you might have a shot of getting again someday, maybe 3. I'm not sure.
At least 2 of mine are currently available if you're in the local area to us.
Okay.
One of them has been done multiple times one of the ones beyond that has been done multiple times by the brewery.
Okay.
So it may be done again. And one I'm just not sure of. There are 2 from a certain brewery that people who listen to this podcast may or may not be able to tell, that who knows when they'll happen again. Who knows? If, when.
Some of their beers do get remade, which is always a plus.
One of them I'm pretty sure is not going to get remade.
I do want to start out with one honorable mention, simply because I want to say the name of this beer. My runner-up beer is from Triptych Brewing in Champaign, Illinois, and this was their Batch 600 beer, and it was entitled, "Excuse me, sir, do you have a moment to talk about Citra?" Which I love it. It is a triple IPA that is entirely Citra and then double dry hopped with Citra as well, because Citra. Sir, would you like to talk about Citra with me at this time?
No, sir. Thank you.
Cool.
Please leave my property.
Shall we move on to our 6 beers of the year in no particular order?
Yes.
Danielle, would you like to start, or do you want me to start?
Well, if I start, then you're going to have to piggyback, because my first beer is one that I know has to be on your list.
Fine. Go ahead.
It is from Burial Beer Co., the aforementioned brewery that people might have expected, and it is called Chorus of Chaos.
Yes.
It is a bourbon barrel-aged stout with roasted pistachio.
No, it is not.
I'm sorry, it's a brown ale, isn't it?
It is a bourbon barrel-aged imperial brown ale.
Sorry, the description said just a bourbon barrel-aged ale.
You would expect this to be a stout because so much of what we do in beer is crazy stouts. But this is the thing that I love so much about this beer, is that it is a Willet bourbon barrel-aged imperial brown ale.
Okay, but can I talk about the things which are in it, please?
Please.
With roasted pistachios, cinnamon, rose petal, Meyer lemon, and Madagascar vanilla.
Oh, yeah.
It almost comes off as like a Middle Eastern or Mediterranean dessert. You've got that nice like rose flavor and pistachio flavor that you get from a really good baklava, and you've got the lemon to brighten everything up. You've got that vanilla and cinnamon, which are going to be recurring themes on my list. Sorry about it.
Yo, that's the place to be.
And it is absolutely amazing. You poured this beer and I was just like, oh, this beer and I need a moment.
I really feel like, so I was up in Asheville and I went to Burial because this is how I do my life. And I sat down and I had like an IPA and I had something else. I'm like, oh, these are good. And I'm just like, I guess I should try this Chorus of Chaos. And Kristen poured me Chorus of Chaos, brought it over and said, here you go. And I had a sip. I sat there and thought about it for 5 minutes. I stood up, turned around, and grabbed 5 bottles off the shelf because it is one of the best beers I've ever had in my life from them. It is unbelievable. And the fact that it's just chilling on a shelf is probably a testament to the fact that people are afraid of things that say brown ale. If it doesn't say Imperial Stout, it can't be great, right? Y'all are wrong.
They also only sell it at the brewery, right?
Yeah, but it was super available. They had probably 6 cases on the shelf right then.
Yeah, and I think the difference between Chorus of Chaos and a lot of these other really dark beers which have a lot of intense flavors. I mean, you're talking about a dark beer with vanilla and cinnamon flavors. There is several others. There was another Burial beer that has cinnamon and vanilla that I almost put on my list, but I cut the line off. I wasn't going to put 3 of my 6 beers being Burial beers. But Portal Beyond Non-Existence that they released this year was also a dark
huge
beer that had cinnamon and vanilla in it. And it was absolutely amazing. But Chorus of Chaos has that brightness. It has that depth of flavor that you get from the lemon and the pistachios and the rose petal, which is something that is unlike any other flavor that you're going to get. And it is so different, but also so good.
Can I give you a hot take?
Yeah?
Hot take? Hot take.
Give me the take.
Hot take. Do that hot take.
Hot take.
I'm doing that credit to Warpworld Podcast. They do a hot take every episode, and I love
Give me the hot take.
Bourbon barrel aged browns and imperial browns are more fun to play with than imperial stouts. I think that you can do more with them in terms of crazy adjuncts and flavors with imperial browns than you can with imperial stouts, because imperial stouts are all about the super dark, thick roastiness, and I feel like bourbon barrel aged browns you've got more room to play with. One of my other favorite beers, and I'm sure it's come up on a previous episode, was Holy Mountain's bourbon barrel aged King's Head, which is their imperial oat brown. And again, that beer is so unbelievably complex, and I feel like it's because it's a brown ale and not a stout. That's my hot take.
That's your hot take. What's your first beer?
That was my first beer.
Okay.
What's my other beer?
What's my second beer?
My second beer is actually the beer that I drank in the first half of this show, and it is from Other Half. It is the high density hop
Concentration?
high density hop salvo concentration. I don't know.
It's
all
HDHC, so-
HDHC, all Citra everything, which is a double IPA brewed with Citra and Citro Cryo. It's high density hop charge. There we go. That's what it is. I wrote it down in here. Imagine the flavor of Citra, but like all of the flavor of Citra, and that's all there is in that beer. And it's the juiciest freaking IPA you've ever had in your life. Other Half Brewing from up in New York did a pop-up shop at Salud, and I happened to be working there, not working at Salud, but I was doing work while I was at Salud that day, so I got to be first in line, and I picked up a bunch of their beer, and they are IPA kings. They absolutely are just the champions of IPA in the entire world. I'm sure that you know all about that, Danielle, right?
I do.
Yeah.
They like to make IPAs and double IPAs, and don't ask them about it.
Never ask. But I picked up, just one of a bunch of different six-packs. I'm like, oh, this says all Citra everything. I'm probably going to like it. And then I did a little research into what it was that I had purchased later. And like, oh, so you guys just went like overboard on the hopping on this beer. And it shows. It's so juicy. It's so heavy. It's so rich. It's so Citra everything.
Just to clarify, this episode was not the first time Jake had this beer. He didn't.
No, not at all. I have one can left, and I'm drinking it as soon as possible because, like with all hoppy beer, you got to get to it relatively soon so the hops don't die out. So yeah, Other Half, and I'm sure that this is a stand-in for a lot of different beer that they have, but HDHC All Citra Everything blew my mind.
Cool.
What you got?
From 8th State Brewing Company, I have Getting Older, which is a sour ale with cherry, strawberry, lime, and mint. We had a chance to go to 8th State when we were out in Greenville for a hockey game, I want to say 2-3 months ago at this point.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved this beer. I had it while we were there, and we brought a crowler home, and even the second time going through it, it was still really impressive to me, the depth of the fruit that they got into the sour ale. I really enjoyed it, and they know what they're doing with sour beer. So I thought it was a really good thing to give a shout out to the 8th State in Greenville, South Carolina.
Greenville, South Carolina.
Getting Older.
Yeah, I like that a lot. 8th State has a lot of good stuff. They have a small tap list, but it's always all good. There's never more than like 5 to 8 beers on tap there, but they're all great. All right, my next move is the closest beer to us in terms of physical location. So much so that, no, not that one that you're pointing at. I meant in the grand scheme of physically close. It's from Salud.
Oh.
This one's on your list too.
Yes.
Yes, this is Funky Lee Boy. This is a boysenberry, raspberry, milk sugar, and
Cinnamon
Berliner Weisse. I don't know how cinnamon somehow got shortened to the word in on my piece of paper here.
It's not my fault. You took bad notes.
But it's a Berliner Weisse that is just like the richest freaking Berliner Weisse I've had in a long time. And it's so cool. Not just because it's a great beer, but because this is a beer that is brewed by, Jason and Lee, our friends at Salud Cerveceria, where we host a game night. And Jason has always been, a good friend of ours, and watching Salud grow and then putting out this beer that just freaking blew my mouth away is just so... It's like so heartwarming to just like have that beer and just like, oh, holy crap. Wow. What y'all do?
No, I agree. This is an excellent beer. And also just Lee, the person who this is named after, is Jason's brother. And he's been working there since he was like 14, 15 years old. And now for him to be old enough to be like working there legitimately and to be brewing with them is really awesome. But I absolutely also love the flavor. This has a similar flavor to that 8th State one that I was just talking about, where you've got a really fruited sour flavor, but it's got some depth to it. It's got interesting notes. You're not just getting fruit and sour like you can with a lot of fruited sours, where it's just like, oh, this is a kettle sour. It tastes like nothing really, and tartness. Mm-hmm. But these are both like nice complex sours, and I think that's why they stand out to us.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I love that beer.
So yeah, that's my third one, I guess, as well.
Good job, Salud.
So you've done 3, right?
Yes.
We've covered 3?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the well, as they say, and talk about a Burial Beer Co. beer again.
Let it be known, on this episode of Draft Mechanic, Danielle talked about Burial more than I did.
Yeah, it is, but that is because I wanted to make sure that I got some of those hop-forward beers on this list as well. I could have just made a list of 6 really dark beers that had cinnamon in them that I really enjoyed. But I didn't do that because that would not be helpful to our listeners. But the one I am going to talk about is not super helpful to our listeners either, because I said earlier that there's probably not much of a chance that this particular collaboration beer is going to be brewed again, because that's how collaboration beers tend to work.
Crabs.
Anyway, the beer is called These Incendiary Devices, and it is a collab with Ancillary Fermentation in Cary, North Carolina. Sorry, this is from Burial Beer Company in Asheville, North Carolina. And it is an IPA with dragon fruit, strawberry, and wild blueberry powders. And it is double dry hopped with Medusa, Mosaic, Azaka, and Eldorado hops. And it is amazing. Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Definitely has that hop forwardness that you expect from an IPA. And that comes from that double dry hopping with those 4 different hops. But it does have the fruitiness that I enjoyed from those fruit powders, which is... I mean, it's an interesting way to do it. Most of the time, people will rest their beer on fruit. I'll talk about a beer that was rested on fruit in a minute, or they'll add it during the fermentation. But this is with powders to get that really intense flavor. It was a very red beer, but that also had that hop forwardness. I really enjoyed it. I know you really enjoyed it as well, even though I don't believe it shows up on your list.
It does not.
But it was an IPA that I really liked and wanted to mention here.
Yeah, I restrained myself to only one beer from Burial because otherwise this would be the best 6 Burial beers that I had this year because that is how I am in life. Yeah. So moving on, number 4 for me is a beer from Hubbard's Cave in Niles, Illinois. And Hubbard's Cave does a lot of crazy, stouts and fresh hop IPAs. And I'm going to pick one of their stouts in particular. This is the chocolate and cinnamon version of Pot de Creme, which is their imperial milk stout. This one is with cocoa nibs, cinnamon, vanilla beans, and lactose. And
Who's got the cinnamon now?
Me. I did, and it was fantastic. And I can say the words chocolate and cinnamon Pot de Creme, and you know exactly what this beer is. You don't have to think about it or I wonder what that actually tasted like. No, it's a huge freaking stout. And it's just freaking thick and juicy, and not juicy. It's thick and sweet and coats your tongue, and it tastes like drinking, straight chocolate, but flavored chocolate. It's so good.
Like a pot de creme?
It tastes like drinking a pot de creme. Who would have thunk it? But yeah, that's it. I mean, I can't say any more about that other than that it's fantastic, and I love it, and I hope that I get to have it again someday.
Okay.
What you got?
Next up, I have from Free Range Brewing their Burn Barrel, which is a Carolina smoked wild ale aged on peaches. Like I said, I was going to say the phrase aged on fruit in a minute. And this is that beer. It is a really nice smoky flavor. It's a wild ale, so it's got that sort of tang and funkiness to it, but it's not really, it's not intensely sour to the point where it's getting you in the back of your jaw in that spot when stuff that's really, really sour gets you. It's a smoked ale. It's got that tang. It's got that fruity, peachy flavor. Mm-hmm. Earlier in the year, I had something from them called Jenny Goes South of the Border. They have a Jenny series, so they're all called Jenny something. And that was a mezcal-inspired beer, and it had that smoked flavor, and I really liked it. But as is the case with most of those beers, they brewed it for their tap room, and it was gone, and it probably won't come back again. Or if it does, it will again be a tap room exclusive. This Burn Barrel sort of took that flavor profile that I had enjoyed and tweaked it a little bit. It added the peaches, but it kept that really smoky, funky flavor. And this was something they actually bottled. So this is one of the ones that I said I know is still available locally because I've seen it recently at bottle shops. You can still get this one. So if you're in Charlotte, check out Burn Barrel from Free Range. It's super good. I mean, I guess unless you don't like smoked beer.
If you don't like smoked beer, don't drink the smoking. No, I mean, please continue listening. If you don't like smoked beer, we also appreciate you. You're all good people. Please? Danielle, please?
What's your next beer?
All right. My next beer is from the same brewery, but the other side of the same brewery, because Hubbard's Cave also has a version of their brewery called Un Année.
I was like, Free Range doesn't have another side.
No, Un Année is the funky, wild, sour version of Hubbard's Cave. Un Année actually started first, and I'm hoping next time I'm up in Chicago, they'll have their new facility open, but they do all the crazy stuff. And Un Année had a beer in their Le Grand Monde series, which is kind of their brewery exclusive series, and it was simply called 2019-3. Yeah, that's it. But this farmhouse sour ale was with cinnamon, peaches, and vanilla beans. And that's such an interesting flavor combination that I remember having this at the brewery and just sitting there and just thinking what's going on in my mouth right now? what are these flavors and how are they working together? It tasted like peach cobbler in a way, but peach cobbler, the beer. And it was so freaking complex and so much interesting stuff going on there that I brought some bottles back home. You've also had a chance to have this one.
I have. It was very good.
It's something else. And it's just a testament to how interesting Unane gets. And I'm sure that, I think, again, to mention him twice in an episode, Chris McGowan, friend of the show, gets a lot of their stuff, and he has had this in the past and has had a bunch of other Unane stuff. Hey, Chris, anytime that you want to bring Unane bottles to the bottle shares that we host at Geekway, you are 100% welcome, and I will give you high fives. Unane is amazing, and I cannot wait to get up and visit Unane and Hubbard's Cave again, because if they are 2/6 of my best beers of the year list, then they're obviously doing something right. Danielle?
That's 1/3 for those of you who like reduced fractions.
No, keep this fraction unreduced.
So my final beer for my 6-pack is from Bearded Iris Brewing, and it is called Breaking News. It is their sour double IPA with blueberries, lactose, vanilla, and Bar Rouge hops. Now, you had just said that the Unane beer tasted like peach cobbler. The Breaking News, they often say tastes like blueberry cobbler, and I agree with them 100%. You've got sort of the fruit flavor, obviously, from the blueberries, but the lactose and the vanilla give it sort of that cobblery pastry flavor that you would normally get from a crust on a cobbler. It's really good, and Bearded Iris knows what they're doing with IPAs. Like, I don't think anybody is going to argue that Bearded Iris is not an amazing IPA brewery. They may not be the absolute best in the country, but they're in that conversation, whether you think that they are or not. Like, you talk about your other halves, you talk about Bearded Iris, you talk about any number of great IPA breweries. And I absolutely love this one. It was not a, pure taste only like the hops IPA, which they are very good at doing. In honesty to our good listeners, I had a period in the middle of this year where I got real mad at my phone and I stopped logging a bunch of stuff, be that games or beers or anything, and I just didn't care to have an association with my phone. So while I've had a bunch of Bearded Iris, like pure hop flavored IPAs, I went back and I couldn't tell which ones were which. But I remember Breaking News, and I looked at that list and I was like, I remember this. I remember enjoying it. I remember where I was when I was enjoying it. And not only is that the sign of just a beer that is memorable, but to me that's a good thing. Like, you want your beer of the year to be something that you look back on and you're like, oh, I remember why that was cool to me. And this was very much that. I enjoyed it a lot. They've done Breaking News in 2016, I believe they had done it.
It's been around.
And they have done it again this past year, so that may come around. That's the one I said may come around again in the future if you have a chance to check it out. If you're in the Nashville area,
cool.
Go check out some Bearded Iris.
All right, so do I have the honor, I guess, of closing this one out?
Yes, the final honor.
So I have the final honor of closing out our best beers of 2019, and this is an interesting one because it is it's the most unassuming beer on this entire list. In fact, it's the quietest and chillest and honestly lightest beer on this list. And this is Dogfish Head's Slightly Mighty. This is their low-calorie, light, quote-unquote, IPA that they released middle of the year this year. This one is 95 calories, 3.6 carbs per 12-ounce serving. It uses monk fruit extract for sweetness. And this is a beer that I don't think it's like the most amazing flavor I've ever had. It's honestly quite middle of the road, but this beer means something to me a lot. Those of you who have been longtime listeners, late last year, I was diagnosed as diabetic type 2, which really changed a lot about the way I experience food and obviously beer, because beer is a very high carb kind of thing. And at that time, I was just like, well, I got to cut back on everything. And I did. I cut back on a lot of stuff, but middle of this year, we saw the release of Slightly Mighty, which is a very low-carb beer that allowed me to have something that I could drink when we're at parties, when we're hanging out with friends, and I can have this beer and it won't wreck my day. It won't make me feel horrible. And so, realistically, Slightly Mighty might not be the best beer I've ever had. It's probably not even one of the 10 most flavorful IPAs I had this year, but it's a critically important beer to me, in that it allows me to continue experiencing beer in the way that I want to. And the other thing that's a really big plus about it is that it doesn't suck like a lot of light beer. It's still got a good bit of flavor. It's still got a lot of hops to it. I still get the hop bitterness and the hop profile that I want without getting, just annihilated by a super heavy, super carby kind of beer. So realistically, Slightly Mighty is one of my top beers of 2019, simply out of its, I guess, benefit to my life.
No, I mean,
which is a weird thing to say.
I agree wholeheartedly. And if you have that beer in the fridge or we bring it to a party or something, I'll definitely drink one or two of them.
Yeah.
It's not a bad beer. It's a Dogfish Head IPA. They don't make bad IPAs. They make good beer. And it tastes like a craft beer. It doesn't taste like, one of these giant bourbon barrel-aged brown ales or stouts or anything like that. But it does taste like a good, well-made, cared-for beer. And it's an enjoyable product. It's something that I appreciate that when we buy it, I know Sam is now part of Boston Beer Company, and that was like a thing for people this year. But I feel better saying like, okay, this is something that is both a healthful choice for you, and I feel like we're making the right choice with our money when we buy it. I'm all for this beer, and I'm glad it exists. We drank a lot of Brizzo this year, which is also another one of those things that is a local product that is more healthful for you. And I'm glad we have those options.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is.
That doesn't mean we're never going to drink these giant stouts. We are certainly going to drink these giant stouts sometimes.
Yeah, but it's nice to have a beer that I can have a 6-pack of throughout a party. When we went to our New Year's party, I bought 2 6-packs of Slightly Mighty, and I had a can, once an hour or so. And that was a really, really comfortable way to experience that party rather than drinking, 10 cans of other half IPA or something like that.
You would die.
Maybe not 10. I'm just spitballing numbers at this point. I'm sorry. I don't drink that many beers. I swear. But Slightly Mighty allows me to have the beer that I want in a way that I want to experience, which is fantastic. And a lot of other breweries have followed suit. Like we were at the Brewers at 4001 Yancey here in Charlotte, which is kind of the joint venture of Southern Tier, Victory, and Six Point. And all of them have a light, low-carb IPA or pale ale now. Dogfish Head Slightly Mighty, I feel like it is not the first, but it's the first like really big out there IPA that is also a light beer. And I'm super excited to see where that continues in the future because for everybody, it's a healthier way to enjoy really flavorful craft beer.
I also appreciate that they were intent on specifying that it was a low carb beer. A lot of these light beers, you look at them and they say, oh, we're lower in calorie, which is fine, but it doesn't necessarily translate to being lower. Like the way that the calories translate is not necessarily what you would expect.
Yeah.
And for Dogfish Head to be like, okay, this is lower in calorie and a lower in carb, and it is meant to be something that you can drink if this is a concern of yours.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, when they had that press release, when they released this beer, I remember you saying, like Sam was saying, I'm not going to get...
I'm not getting any younger, and I'm not going to stop drinking, so I better start doing some science.
Yeah, so that's what this beer is, and I appreciate that.
Hey, Sam, you're never going to listen to this, but thank you so much for doing some science. I really appreciate it, because I love where this is, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
So that is our top 6 beers each of 2019.
If you would like to see more information on those beers, you can obviously visit the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net. That's where it is. You can also go to boardgames.beer, which is also a website that I pay actual human money for.
Which goes to the same place.
It's the exact same website. But in the meantime, here is an sponsorship message from our good friends at Gray Fox Games, and we will be right back after this to talk about our favorite games that we have played so far of the year 2019.
Nice.
After the fall of Rome, Europe entered into the Dark Ages, but with the rise of feudalism, prosperity returned to the area. In After the Empire, you are a medieval ruler trying to grow and defend your fiefdom.
Players will gather resources, build buildings, enlist troops, and recruit skilled refugees to both increase the value of their city and fortify its defenses against impending invaders.
Having a more valuable fiefdom yields greater rewards, but also brings more invaders looking to get their cut of what's yours. If they manage to sack, you will lose gold, your buildings will be damaged, and your refugees may be injured.
Whoever's city is most prosperous at the end of the game is the winner of After the Empire. After the Empire is available for pre-order now from Gray Fox Games.
Gray Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted.
All right, well, here we are at the big feature or something, the main thing that we talk about.
Event.
The most 6 games of the year.
Okay.
The most? No, sorry. Our top 6 games of the year, not the most games. These are not the most games at all.
No.
In fact, my number 6 game I've only had a chance to play twice this year. I hope that's okay.
What is this garbage?
What is the game, or what is it? Like, what are you asking me? The garbage of playing it twice or the garbage of the game? I don't think it's garbage. It's a very good game. I like it.
The twice playing.
Well, sometimes you play a game and you think it's going to be good and you're like, oh man, I really enjoyed that, but I don't know if I really enjoyed that. And then you play it again and you're like, oh no, I really did enjoy that. And that's kind of where I am at my number 6 game of the year, which is Mega City Oceania. From Hub Games, designed by Jordan Draper and Michael Fox. This is a dexterity game. Yes, it is a dexterity game, but it's not a 10-minute dexterity game where you throw things at each other. It is a game of constructing weird little cityscapes that you then slide in on hexagonal pallets to the main city zone. Basically, this is a re-implementation of one of the Tokyo series of games by Jordan Draper, Tokyo Jukatu, I believe it was called, in which you have a bunch of different little weird shapes that are, just all sorts of different shapes, and you're trying to build things that fit in certain spaces. But Mega City Oceania takes this building mechanic and develops it into a full game that I feel like is worth it as an actual game. You have contracts that you are trying to fulfill that require a certain number of pieces, a specific height, and maybe have some kind of construction thing, like you can't use any of the gray pieces, which are steel, or you have to have an archway of some kind. It's just interesting requirements that make you really think about that. And then all the time you are also trying to make the tallest buildings, because obviously building the tallest buildings in this city that you are building is kind of a thing you A, want to do for prestige, and B, want to do for points, because it makes you feel so good. But the catch of this game is that you are building the city, or you're building the buildings in front of you on these little hexagonal, cardboard pieces out of these plastic pieces, and then you have to physically deliver them into the city. You have to slide them in. So in addition to building something that looks cool and satisfies constraints, it has to be structurally sound enough for you to physically slide it into the city. And I think that is where the real catch of this game is. That's what makes it interesting to me. It is not just a game about stacking things. It is a game about engineering and being smart enough to build a thing that won't fall over. And then honestly, half the time it does fall over and you get a kind of a chuckle out of it at your hubris of thinking that this 190 meter thing, in game scale, could actually work. But then after the 3rd or 4th try, it does, and you've made this giant skyscraper out of only glass pieces, and you feel so good, and you tweet a picture of it to Michael Fox, and he gives you extra 2 points that aren't actually valuable in game, but I feel good about them. But yeah, Mega City Oceania. We'll be talking about this one again probably as we get some more plays of it in, but I really, really like it, and it shot way up on my list for being a dexterity game that's more than just pieces.
Not a game for people who have tables which do not have flat surfaces.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. It's been hard for us to find tables to play this on.
I do feel like this is a game that sort of gives a big old bird to all the people who bought gaming tables with felted surfaces because there's extra friction there and you're going to have a harder time sliding across them.
I honestly think I'd have a better time on felt and then some other things, but I just really want a giant neoprene mat for this, so I'll probably whip out one of the random giant space neoprene mats, and then we'll have Mega City Spacianos.
Just what everybody wants.
Mega Space City.
Well, my 6th game doesn't have anything to do with mega cities or the ocean.
Does that have anything to do with space?
No cities, no space, no ocean, only trees.
Oh, okay.
My 6th game is going to be Bosk, which is a game from Floodgate Games that we've talked about a bunch of times on this episode. It is a game of 2 parts. The first part, you are going to be building your forest, from which, in the second part, you will be distributing your leaves across the board in order to be able to play an area control game that will take place in the different sort of colors of habitat that are printed on the board. So you are, in the first part, not only trying to maximize your points, but you're also trying to set yourself up in the best way you possibly can for the second portion of the game. Mm-hmm. I really like it. I think it's a very smart game. I think it is really neat the way you need to be sort of focusing on two different goals, even at the very beginning of the game when you are placing your trees originally. I think it is fun. It's also fun to say, when the squirrel falls out of the tree, you can't put any more leaves on top of the squirrel because he's a squirrel.
The squirrel will be explained later.
Yeah, it's a good, fun game. It often takes a little bit of explaining to get people to understand that in the first part of the game, you are working on the grid lines. In the second part of the game, you are working with the different colored and shaded habitats on the board. But once they get that, it is really interesting to watch people try to solve this area control puzzle with the trees that they placed on the board. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy it. I know you also enjoy this game. Whether or not it is on your top 6, I don't know.
We will have to see.
But I know at least you enjoy it. And it has had a lot of longevity. It looks very pretty on the board because you've got these 3-dimensional cardboard standee trees. You're putting out all of these leaf tokens. I had considered the leaf tokens for my favorite non-mini component.
Oh, okay.
The trees have some issues because some of the trees can look somewhat similar depending on, whether you have specific color blindnesses or the quality of the light. But the leaf tokens certainly are very distinct, and I like them a lot. They are very easy to show the area control that's going on in the game, and I really like it.
Yeah, this was honestly on my short list. I'll spoil it. It's not in my top 6.
Okay.
But I do really appreciate the way that the game's strategy is. The entire first half of the game is not just a game of, area control and finding yourself on the lines, but setting yourself up for a successful second half of the game. And I love having that kind of strategy where this matters not just for the points I'm scoring now, but for the points I'm scoring later. Bosk is really smart. Mm-hmm. All right, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is a game that when we first got it, I didn't expect to like. And truth be told, it's because it's from a publisher that I didn't expect to be able to put out a game.
Okay.
It's from BoardGameTables.com.
Oh, okay.
And it is on tour.
Wow.
I got a chance to play this again recently at our last game night. Mm-hmm. And I had liked this game throughout the year. I've played it a number of times throughout the year since we got it. It is a roll and write game where you have a map of the United States, a laminated sort of menu looking map of the United States, and you're using a dry erase marker to write in numbers. Your goal being at the end of the game, once all of the numbers on the map have been filled in, to create a route where numbers are either equivalent or increasing every stop that you make, never doubling back, and creating this tour route that you are going to be going through the United States. Inevitably, I end up cutting off half of the country because of hubris, but it is a really fun game. The places that you can write the numbers are determined by these cards which are flipped up, and they say that you can place the numbers in certain, I don't want to say quadrants because there aren't 4 of them, there are 6, but certain portions of the country, and you can use the cards that are flipped up to place one of the 2 numbers that you're writing, so you have to decide which card you're using with which number. Is it worth it to write it in the specific city listed on the card, because you'll get an extra point, but only if you include that card that city in your route at the end of the game. It is really thinky, but the mechanics of it are really easy. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of game where everybody at the end of the game is going, oh, I just need this one thing to happen. And you're all like willing this one thing to happen. But everybody's willing different things to happen. Like, I really want a 37 and a west to come up. And somebody else wants like a 21 and a north. And you're all like hoping for this one thing that you need. And it's really fun. It's the thing that I have put it in our game bag repeatedly because every time that we don't bring it, somebody asks for it. Or every time that we do bring it, somebody pulls it out. And it's the kind of thing that keeps coming out. It's an excellent production. Like I said, it is these laminated folding boards. It's dry erase markers. It is a really nicely done game. It's got these big chunky dice. The cards are big enough everybody can see it. I really like this game on tour.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm glad that I got the extra 4 boards for that so you can play up to 8 on that.
We actually have 12, I think.
Wait, what? Don't tell Will. Nobody tell Will Foy that we might have 4 of his boards. All right, my number 5 comes to us from one of our very favorite designers and friend of the show, Brian Surrey, and this is Freshwater Fly. This is from Bellwether Games, came out kind of middle of the year, and we had done a Kickstarter preview for it last year. It is kind of the follow-up to Coldwater Crown, which was the kind of the put your name on the map kind of game for Brian Surrey. But I really like Freshwater Fly because it has this kind of the Brian Surrey trademark of interconnecting things that you're doing there. The die that you're drafting is not just the fish that you're going to take, but it's also how you can move your fish on your reel, and it's also how you can use your fish and all your other different special powers to then kind of manipulate that stuff through. I think it's a really interesting set collection game with a really great theming, really solid art that I talked about earlier as some of my favorite art of the year. It just feels right, even if you don't like to look at fishes.
Not as attractive as birds.
Fish, not as attractive as birds. Put that on a t-shirt. Don't actually put that on a t-shirt. But a Freshwater Fly is a kind of game that I enjoy playing a lot. It comes out regularly, and I'm excited to see if we do an expansion for this one in the way we did with Coldwater Crown with the Sea expansion.
We aren't.
Not we, but they. You know, the editorial we of people that are Brian Surrey. Pretty much like Brian.
Okay.
I like Freshwater Fly a lot. It's a great game, and the final production of it turned out fantastic. It just looks great, and it's great on the table, and I want to play it more.
Okay. My fourth game is a game, it's kind of going to spoil an upcoming episode, I have a feeling. This is a game we haven't talked about yet because we only got a chance to play it in the last month while we were on our end of year break.
Yeah.
But it is a game we've played a number of times since then, and I've really enjoyed. I've enjoyed its many incarnations when you can play it, and that is Taverns of Tiefenthal.
Okay. Yeah. No, that
which
makes sense.
has a very basic version that you can play, and then it's got a bunch of modules that you can add in to make the game more complex or different. If you've played with a couple of modules, you can switch those out for some of the ones you haven't necessarily played with a lot. It is at its core a dice drafting game and also a deck building game, and I think the way that it intertwines those two aspects is really good. It's really straightforward, and it is the kind of game that when you explain it to somebody, they immediately understand what's going to be going on. And I really like the fact that when you are taking cards into your deck, they go immediately on top of your deck so that you are seeing the benefit that really gives you a nice momentum forward. You're not shuffling in the good card you just bought somewhere into your deck, so it may not come up for several more turns. You buy it, you know what's coming up next turn. I really like that, and for reasons I'm sure we're going to expand on in future episodes, I have been enjoying Taverns of Tiefenthal, and I want to play it more. I want to play all the forms of it more.
Yeah, that one kind of came out in a similar position to Quacks of Quedlinburg last year. Unsurprisingly, Wolfgang Warsch releases a game for North Star Games at PAX Unplugged-ish, and we enjoy it a lot. I think that's a really good sign, and I think that means we're probably going to come back to this one again and again as we move into 2020. Oh, gosh.
And I hope it has the same staying power that Quacks has had with us. We still bring out Quacks all the time. You just got coin capsules for our little ingredient tokens because we had played it so much that they were starting to wear. So I hope that Taverns of Tiefenthal has the same staying power that Quacks has had. So I'm all about it. Cool. That's my number 4 game.
My number 4 game of the year is a tiny little box. And it wants you to use pencils and stuff, but you wish you had colored pencils and whatever. It's Cartographers.
Yeah.
Cartographers from Thunderworks Games is in the role player universe, allegedly, but it is a flip and draw random writer in which you are flipping over cards and using those cards to then draw little sections of land on your little sheet. Your sheet is a map, and you are filling in that map, hence the name Cartographers.
Which is not how cartographers work.
No, all cartographers worked by just exploring randomly and being like, I don't know, maybe there's a land
and deciding where there was a forest.
Where do I want to put this forest? I don't know. Like, okay, so weird thematic disconnect aside, the game is really smart, and I think it does something that a lot of random writers don't do. There's language. I figured it out. What it does that nobody else seems to do in the random writer space is have player interaction. You will have very frequently come up these cards that are monster attacks, and then you pass your sheet to your neighbor, and they have to draw in some stuff to mess up your plans. And I love that. I think it's something that, again, nobody else is doing in the random writer space, and it just really kind of escalates that, and it doesn't ruin the player count. Like, realistically, still any number of players can play Cartographers, which is, again, one of the big strengths of any kind of random writer is the scalability. But this is a game that's infinitely scalable and still able to include that kind of player interaction that you don't see in this space. And also you get to draw polyominoes, and boy, do I love polyominoes. Obviously, the caveat here is that you want to have go out and buy a whole bunch of colored pencils so that you have different colors for all of the different shapes of your land. But that is a stylistic choice that you will undoubtedly want.
They do have a system in place that you can use if you don't want to buy colored pencils. They have
you draw
different
little
symbols
and
for
stuff,
each
but
type of land.
You want some colored pencils.
This is
Everybody
important
does.
if you have colorblind people.
Yes.
So, like, there are actually symbols so you can tell what is what.
Yes. And then I draw fun little, little cartoons.
I like your
of my
monsters that you draw, yes.
Yes. All right, Danielle, moving on to number 3. I think it's my lead.
Yeah.
What do you think my number... This is actually kind of interesting because, like, when we got to number 4, you said Taverns of Tiefenthal, and I expected that to be a little bit higher. So I'm actually, like, really interested to see what your 2 and 3 are. Obviously, I know what your number 1 is. It's probably my number 1 as well. But my number 3, you probably expect to be on this list.
Oh.
It is a game of dice. It is a game of dice placement.
Is it a game that's in German?
It is not.
Oh.
Knockmall
so good?
Knockmall So Good did not make my top 6, mainly because I feel like I have ascended beyond Knockmall. No.
Heck.
When you score 199 points on a game of Knockmall Solo, you're just like, well, there's nothing
I
left to do.
understand.
No, but this is a game that is from the past, that is back again. It is Las Vegas Royale. I consider Las Vegas Royale my number 3 game because it is different and distinct enough from your classic Las Vegas
I will not argue with you
that
there.
that it earns its own place on the list. I have always been a big fan of Las Vegas. I think it is a fantastic game for 4 to 6 players. I think it's just amazing at that place because you have so much to do and there's so much decision. There's such an interesting decision space. It is an area control game disguised as casinos. It is the least obvious area control game that I can think of. And what they did in Las Vegas Royale is exactly what I wanted. They added in depth. They added in options. They added in variability and replayability. There are so many things you can do with the different casinos and the different modules in Las Vegas Royale. That means that this is the version I recommend everybody have in their collection if they're going to have Las Vegas, because if you want to, you can still play Las Vegas, but if you've played Las Vegas 100 times and you want something new, you can still play the new stuff. I would really appreciate it if you did not shame my choice.
I'm not shaming it. I have taken this game out of the box and been so overwhelmed by the amount of choice and by the stuff that they've added to it that and this is a feeling I don't often have. I desperately wanted our old copy of Las Vegas to be available to me.
Well, you can still play that. You don't have to play any of the new stuff. You just don't put out the additional casinos. You just put out 1 through 6.
That was an option.
Yeah, you may always just put out the 1 through 6 and play your base Las Vegas. But again, after you've played that enough times to be like, oh, well, okay, so I know how the base is going to work. You can be like, I'm going to flip out one of the 16 additional casino powers.
There are very many.
You only put out, however many you want. Like, realistically, they tell you to put them on the 1, 2, and 3 dice because that's interesting. But you can put all 6 out. You can put 2 out if you want. It doesn't matter. You can play with it however you want, and you can change this game out however you need. And all of the modules from all of the expansions, plus a bunch of new, interesting, and exciting modules are available in there. And I feel that this is one of the best games you can have that plays up to 6 players. I love Las Vegas Royale, and I'm actually kind of wondering if I should put it slightly higher on my list.
Well, too late.
Too late. We'll have to wait for the Redux in July. What's your number 3, D?
It's Cartographers. Well, you've already talked about it.
Yes.
It's a very enjoyable game. I've already added my 2 cents to you talking about it. It's Cartographers. I very much enjoy that game. The first time I played it, I was like, this is fine. But I wanted to play it again. And I've already talked about wanting to play it more. Every time I play this game, I want to play it again.
I think one of the most exciting parts is that we have not played that with the skills expansion yet. It's a mini expansion that allows you to manipulate your cards in a fun and interesting way. We haven't even played with that yet, and I feel like there's a lot of space there still to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that it had the 2 sides of the different sheet, and that was interesting and exciting. Yeah, I really like Cartographers. I want to continue playing it.
All right. Well, So this is interesting. I have no idea what your number 2 is.
Yes, you do.
No, I really don't. I feel like you know what my number 2 is at this point.
Probably.
So what is your number 2?
It's Letter Jam.
Oh, wow.
I hate that dang berry, but I love that game.
I did not think this was going to place this high for you. That's awesome.
I love word games. Word games are like my bag.
Okay.
I love word games. And Letter Jam is absolutely the best. is absolutely the best word game that I can think of.
Huh.
It is a game where you can throw a whole bunch of players in and you can still play this game. It is not a party game, as I said earlier, because
Nope.
you need to sit there and you need to focus on the available possible words that you can possibly come up with. But I really liked the way that you can give clues. You can sort of lead people to try to get them to guess what their letters are. I think it's a very, very, very smart word game, and I enjoy playing a word game. So for me, this was, I mean, as I was going through my game rankings, and I used the Pub Maple engine, I think you did as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going through, and this is rising to the top, and I'm like, yeah, I guess this is a really great game. I would love to play this game more. I'd particularly love to play this game more with people who've played it before, who understand how to give the really good clues, but you can play it with people who've not played it before and try to help them, and that is an extra challenge to the seasoned players of the game. I think this is a really fun game. I just need to wrap the cover of the box in wrapping paper.
I'll use a Sharpie and I'll Sharpie out all the letters for you. How about that?
Maybe don't do that.
Maybe no?
No.
Okay.
But I really like Letter Jam, and I would like to keep playing it going forward.
Okay. Well, my number 2 is probably not a huge surprise. It is a game you've already mentioned. It is the Taverns of Tiefenthal. Just like this time last year, a Wolfgang Warsch game with a bunch of modules and a bunch of interlocking tracks is the game that I'm picking. He really knows what he's doing, and I'm so excited to see what there is going to be in the future, what alliterative city and occupation we have next year this time. But Taverns of Tiefenthal takes dice drafting and deck building and does away with all the crappy parts that I don't like. You already mentioned it. When you buy a card, it goes on top of your deck. Thank you. Thank you, deck building, for doing this thing for me finally. Because there's nothing that sucks more than buying that really awesome card in Star Realms and just being like, man, I hope it comes up eventually. I don't know, I gotta wait 4 or 5 turns before it happens.
And I certainly can't put it into a combo right now.
And I think a lot of that kind of comes down to the fact that in Taverns of Tiefenthal, you only have 9 rounds in the game, so obviously if you don't get it immediately into your hand, it's never going to come out at all, or it's going to come out once and you're going to be sad. But I feel like the way that it handles deck building and the way that it handles dice drafting, in that you can buy dice with your bartenders that will come right back into your, you'll have them regardless, but then you're also drafting your dice. It mitigates both of those things that are such a pain in the butt in those particular styles of games, that it allows me to want to play them. I think the thing that is really awesome at Taverns of Tiefenthal is that we have another 3 modules we got to dig into that add more stuff. We haven't played with reputation tracks or the guest book or the third thing I can't remember the name of, Comedy Rule of Threes. There it is. I don't know. There's another one. Ha ha ha. Mm-hmm. But there's other modules. I'm excited to see what they add to it because what we've played so much in the Taverns of Tiefenthal has been fantastic.
Agreed.
And with that, it is not a surprise where we are headed for our number 1 game of the year. And I feel like it is worthy of mention that a game and or game series has now given us back-to-back winnings. And I almost wonder if we should remove this from the future and just make it its own particular award, in that this is the game that Escape Tales put out this year.
I don't know. They could always time stories it up.
They could always time stories it up. But until then, Escape Tales Low Memory is our game of the year.
Yes.
Pretty much unequivocally.
We had discussed this earlier, so Jake
Yeah.
is speaking for both of us.
This is one of those things that, like, realistically, we talked about this when we played Escape Tales Low Memory about 2 months ago, and we're like, well, crap. They didn't drop the ball on this one. I guess this is pretty much a shoo-in.
I will say, this is a game, there was at least one puzzle in this one that was a little bit frustrating to me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We always talk about Escape Tales being strong on its puzzles, and it is still amazingly strong on its puzzles.
They're so
good. There is at least one that we had some trouble with. However, other friends of ours who played the game didn't even come across the puzzle that we had trouble with. Or if they did, they did not have enough trouble to identify it as the one that would be troublesome. So I still think this is an amazingly strong game. It is, I guess, slightly lighter than the first one.
It is slightly later than the first one in that there is no weird occult ritual in which you are going to go perform a dark ritual to go save your child from a coma that has been death or something.
I think you might have ruined the story on the first one, but
It's very early on.
yeah, okay. It is slightly lighter than that, but it is by no means yucks
It's
type of story.
It's a straight up Black Mirror.
It is a
episode.
Black Mirror
It is
story.
straight up Every technological advancement comes with a price.
And it is a very, very good puzzle game. They have broken it out into a more digestible format. I really like the fact that this year's game has three-ish hour stories,
Yeah.
as opposed to one 6 to 8 hour story, which, even though it had a very good saving mechanic, you still had to remember where you were in the midst of that story.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, if you finish a module, you are at an end point. Like, they are all connected. Don't think that it's like an individual thing. But if you finish the module, you can be like, okay, the story will pick up from a new point when we come back.
Yep.
And I think that makes it a much more playable thing for people who don't have 9 hours, which is most people.
Low memory was perfect in that particular, perspective as well, because like we played it 3 consecutive nights, and we're obviously the kind of people that are obsessed with escape tales in general. But I feel like this is the kind of game that you could play it on 3 separate weekends, or you could play it 3 times a month apart, and you would still get the same out of it. Because each section of the game has its own cohesive universe and its own cohesive story and method of play that you don't have to remember things from the first part to make the second part make sense. And it builds on itself in such an exciting and interesting way. And just to kind of give a wink back to earlier in the show, this is the other game that was my most innovative game. I won't tell you why, but when you play it, you'll understand. It does some things that blew my mind in such an exciting and interesting way, especially if you played the first Escape Tales. I didn't think that they would be able to follow it up with a game that stepped as far into a new space as the first Escape Tales did, but they managed to do it with low memory, to the point where I am so excited to see where the third one in the series, which has been confirmed, it is on the way.
Ooh.
Dark fantasy.
Hell.
That's all I'm saying.
It's not called Escape Tales Dark Fantasy.
No, it
I was
takes
like,
place
that's a adult situation
Ayo.
right there.
No, it takes place in a dark fantasy world. But I'm really excited to see where they go when they step even further away from reality. Who knows where this could go? And after 2, and I'm so excited that they're taking their time and making sure that they work, and then doing what they do with the app in terms of making the puzzle solutions so exciting. It wasn't even really until I demoed for Board and Dice at PAX Unplugged, I did some demoing of Escape Tales, and I watched people go through the first tutorial rooms 24 times, and some of them did different things, and some of them, went different ways, but all of the ways worked. Everything worked. Danielle, it's so exciting to know that if we played this game again and made different choices, it would still work.
Oh, absolutely. And the way the game ended makes me 100% sure of that. I also want to throw out here, I know that one and done games, and this is not necessarily one and done, like Jake said, we could play through it again and make different choices and absolutely end up in a different spot. But if you don't want to go through and do the puzzles again, this game is $25 if you buy it. That is not the MSRP, but if you're going to go...
It's silly cheap.
I think it's like 30 something if you go MSRP, but if you realistically went to go buy this, most of your board game retailers, at least the online ones, you're talking $25 to $26. For a 9-hour experience that is an awesome puzzling experience. If that sounds like your kind of thing, if you like Black Mirror, if you like puzzle games, this is absolutely worth that. I would suggest play it at sub 4 players. 2 to 3 players feels like the optimum number for me.
Yeah.
Because then everybody gets a really nice, clear look at everything that you're looking at. You can pass things around fairly easily. But for $25, like, that's less than a Time Stories expansion. So I feel like if you think that this might be your thing, absolutely go. It's worth the price of admission.
If you've played Unlock or Exit or Deckscape or Undo or Time Stories or any of the other Escape the Room style games and you wanted more, or if you felt satisfied, then I don't understand why you're not buying Low Memory literally right now. Other than the fact that you're listening to this podcast.
Mike could be driving a car.
Don't buy it if you're driving a car. But after you're done driving a car, go get Low Memory. It's freaking amazing.
It's very good.
Yeah, and then also get The Awakening, because it is also worth having. This one of the things that I love the most about Low Memory is that it does not invalidate The Awakening in any way. I feel like
why would it?
Well, because you might be like, oh, this one does it better or does things differently.
It does certainly do it differently.
It does it differently, but it doesn't do it in a way that invalidates the existence of the first one, which is so important. Like, realistically, I'm sure that if you get into unlock number 15, it does some things that unlock number 1 is just like, oh, this is boring and rote at this point. But they're so significantly different enough in terms of the puzzles and the progression and the way that they present their stories that both of them are worth your time. Please, everybody on the internet, get Escape Tales and start rating them highly on BGG so everybody goes and gets them.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it again because I do think it is worth noting. The Awakening is an intense theme.
It's very dark.
So look
heavy.
A little bit into that theme if that seems like something that might be worrisome to you. I know a lot of people who have kids that we've talked to have been significantly like bothered by the fact that there is a child in peril in the first one. Like, not like something is actively pursuing this, but she is in peril.
Yeah.
So look into the theme of the first one, but the second one, Low Memory, the one that came out this year, the one that we're both talking about, mwah, chef's kiss.
Ta-da! All right, well, we've done it. We've talked about our games.
Do you want to like run down anything else that was a huge thing to you?
I'll give you some honorable mentions. Obviously, Bosk was in my honorable mentions. Honorable mention to Imhotep the Duel, which I thought was the best two-player game of the year. I really enjoyed it, and I love playing that game. Obviously, Knockmall So Good, which we'll probably talk about next year when Stronghold Games gets the right to publish it in the U.S. That's this year, not next year, huh? Both Wingspan was number 14, and I was surprised that didn't place higher. I really enjoyed playing that, and I think it's going to continue to stick around for a long time.
It was 11 for me.
Like that game's got a lot of staying power.
It's got more birds now. We just got more birds for that.
What else is really exciting? We're Doomed was number 20 for me overall. I don't know if I mentioned that already. But yeah, that's a good game. And I don't know. Anything else you want to mention?
I had Shikoku at 8, which is a game that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. I really enjoy that game where you're trying to be second from the top or second from the bottom, but making choices from the trade row of cards that will move you a certain amount. Where you are in that row determines how many options that you are. I think it's a really fun game that has interesting choices without being super heavy and super weighed down.
Shikoku, Grand Gamers Guild put that one out. That's fabulous.
Mechanica, obviously, is a game that I really enjoyed, and I hope that you will get to enjoy soon. We just got our copy recently.
Boop.
Like I said, Wingspan was number 11 for me, so those are the ones that sort of stand out. I would like to play Irish Gauge some more. I have a feeling that could very easily sneak its way up into the top 6.
Was that a 2019 release?
It was
I guess so.
Technically a 2014 release, but the second edition was a 2019 release.
Check.
So, yeah, I'm considering the English second edition whenever I say Irish Gauge. That's why it was earlier on my list of games I'd like to play more in 2019. So, yeah, those are the games that I thought weren't in my top 6, but were worth talking about.
Yeah, other games I didn't get to that I'm excited to play. In the Hole, Mountain King, Trismegistus. Mystery House is one that I'm really excited about. I'm excited to see what that does.
Well, we'll come back to it in July.
Yes. Yeah, we will be back in July. We'll do our 2019, 2019 Redux. We do that episode late into the year. But this one's getting kind of long in the tooth, so I feel like it's time for us to move along.
Yeah, we did definitely say that we were trying to keep it under an hour and a half at the beginning of the episode.
Well, we told you also that those changes would come in the next episode.
True.
I will round out this one with a little bit of a preview of next episode and kind of put up what I want to talk about in the final round. Final roundup in every episode, I kind of want to have a discussion topic where everybody can weigh in on it. And I feel like this one is the most easy layup and most obvious choice that I could ever do. What was your biggest surprise in board gaming in 2019? It can be a game that surprised you, or a big disappointment, or a fun gaming moment. Basically, I want you to share an awesome story, and I'm super excited to come back next episode and talk about that. But if you want to jump in on that, please come and join us on the internet on our Slack channel or on our Board Game Geek Guild. We're about to say all those words here as we are rolling into the outro. So thank you once again for tuning into this episode of Draft Mechanic. We really appreciate y'all sticking with us through this winter break and coming back in 2020 for another year of the podcast. You can find us on the internet at draftmechanic.net. It is your one-stop shop for all your Draft Mechanic needs, and you can go to @draftmechanic on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you want to connect with us on social media.
We've got a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will be a thread for this episode which will include that final round question if you are interested in answering it. And if you are local to the Charlotte area, we have our next game night coming up on Tuesday, January 21st at Salud Cerveceria.
Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Grey Fox Games. Visit greyfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest. Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted. It's been a minute. I think we got it, though. Was that a good podcast?
Well,
Yeah.
it's almost a good podcast.
What did I forget?
As always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly and tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
All right. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year!
Good night.
Night.
Draft Mechanic episode 114 was recorded on Sunday, January 5th, 2020. Are you serious?
Yep.
In front of a live studio cat.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Hey, this is Patrick
And this is Eric.
from
Patrick and Eric in the morning. Join us every now and again for about a half an hour as we freeform chat about whatever's on our minds and how it all relates back to our favorite hobby, board gaming.
Patrick and Eric in the Morning can be found on the What Did You Play This Week podcast feed and on the Punchboard Media site.
Happy listening.
where we all
Bring something
to the table.
pull up a chair
At punchboardmedia.com.